Good evening, folks. I'm sorry for the lateness on the videos these days, but life is starting to get really crazy around here. With Clue TV, the preliminary site being up and running, and, the curating of content for that, and trying to get a bunch of other stuff together. It's insanity around here. Just to let you know. Now, I've started to look into the Keddie murders, and I came across, I'll leave a link down below to this statement, and, I found a great site that broke down a couple of the interesting people's statements to police, and I found some of the stuff that they said really odd. Now this is the murder of the 36-year-old single mother of 5. It was her son, and her son's friend who were murdered in the house, and then her 12-year-old daughter was abducted, and her bones were later found 3 years later, about 29 miles away from the original murder site. Now, the person whose statement I have read and, kind of gone through is Marty Smartt. Now, Marty Smartt, I had his notes around here somewhere. Ah, that's right. It's getting weird. Okay, Marty Smartt is he's former Army. He did 2 tours in Vietnam. He was receiving psychiatric care at the Reno Veterans Administration. And he was sort of pally with John Baudet, I hope I'm saying that right, who met Smartt at the VA, the Veterans Administration, and who was there at the hospital supposedly for his epilepsy and a suicide attempt. Now, Bo had a criminal history. He had robbed a bank, and he had spent time in prison for that charge. Smartt is the one who brought Bo back to Keddie. So, after the murders happened, Smartt was interviewed by the police, and he starts going into this very detailed narrative, which is really weird. Because most people, when they're telling the truth, they'll tell you strictly what they remember. And most good investigators can sort of, hear indicative statements, or they know what questions to ask to get a little more detail out of a person who's telling the truth. A person who's lying doesn't give you the opportunity to draw those details out of them. They will just bleh. I believe it was in the it was in another case. I believe her name was Diane. She had murdered her children. She was a known talker. She was a pathological liar. And several people had described her talking style as verbal vomit. That's what you typically hear when someone is lying, especially in a statement to police. So get this shit. Marty Smartt states that on the night of the murders, he left his house at 10 p.m. with his wife and Bo. They went to the bar, and they left the bar at 1 a.m. This is where it gets weird. He states, it was fairly crowded. It was fairly crowded. I didn't notice anything except one person, one individual, came in at about 10:30 to 11 o'clock. Just the way he carried himself, he looked like trouble. Looked out of place for that kind of establishment. Oh, so now a bar is an establishment? What, are they serving fucking highballs? He then goes on to describe the gentleman as wearing a t-shirt and Levi's. He had a buck knife. It's a weird detail to remember. And long hair. He was about 5'7", 5'8". Jesus, dude, could you get any more fucking average? He wore that shirt and he had hair. He had skin. I mean, come on. Then he goes on to elaborate in the statement. He had extremely long hair tied back in a ponytail. And he didn't look like he belonged in the backdoor lounge. Okay, so suddenly he looked too sleazy for a place called the Backdoor Lounge. I'm willing to bet that they didn't have anything over $5 on that menu. Just saying. He says it wasn't the type of clientele that they cater to, but he left shortly thereafter. Thereafter. That's a nice big word for a guy who served in the Army twice. Little to no education, was suffering from psychiatric issues, and frequented a place called the Backdoor Lounge. He left shortly thereafter. He couldn't say, he left a little bit later. That would have sounded more genuine. He then states that he was the only person that Smartt noticed that night, that he noticed who looked unusual that night. That sounds like a typical fucking person. That sounds like a typical guy at, one of the dives around here. Now, here's something that you have to understand, folks, and the guy who wrote this website actually is the one who sort of broke it down, and then I added a little bit of detail. When a person is telling a factual statement, there are no synonyms in the truth. And he breaks it down using this example. He says, if he calls it a gun, he'll call it a gun repeatedly. Every time he refers to the firearm, he will call it a gun. Unless he's been asked to qualify it. Was it a semi-automatic? No, it was a pistol. Then that's understandable, but he'll pretty much describe it as a gun all the way through. Marty Smartt used 3 different words to describe one person. He said person, guy, and individual throughout the course of his statement. What's with the weird lingo there, Marty? He then goes on to tell the police that this person had a mustache, dark, heavy mustache. His hair was dark brown, but he didn't have a beard. And then he proceeds to tell the officers, it was really dark in there, so I couldn't see a whole lot of detail. It was really dark in there, but you could tell what color his hair was? I'm sorry, but in a dark environment, brown hair looks black. Just say it. Now, he says, when he's telling them how dark it is, he says, of course, it was really dark in there. Typically, you'll hear those 2 words, of course, when somebody's lying to you, because what they're trying to do is sort of psychosomatically get you to believe their bullshit. They're trying to make you take for granted that what they're saying is the truth. It's actually really funny, too, because he uses the number 3 a lot in his statement to police. Later on, he's talking about going home, and he gives Bo his medications. Why is he giving a grown man his medications? That's so fucking weird to me. So he gives this grown man his medications, and he describes the dosage. 2 phenobarbital and 2 not gabapentins, 2 dilatants. Why do you need to tell the police the dosages there, Marty? A little weird, don't you think? Anyways, he then says that after he gave him his medication, he went to bed, and he woke up at about 3 o'clock in the morning, 3:30, and that he often woke up around that time to stoke the fire. You'll notice something really interesting, guys, and if you do your independent research on how to tell when someone is being deceptive in their lingo, you'll find this out. Deceptive people that are being deceptive, will often choose the number 3 when they're using a number. Oh, I had a few. Oh, I got up at about 3. Oh, there were 3 of us there. It's not to say that everybody who uses the number 3 obviously is lying. It's an indicator, but it's a really interesting one, don't you think? Because 3 is a nice in-the-middle number. Not too many, not too little. See what I'm saying? Now, the funny thing is that he uses a lot of present tense in his narrative to the police. The use of present tense language is an indicator that his story is bullshit. Because if it was from memory, he would be using the proper past tense. I woke up at about 3 and, I went and I stoked the fire, and I went back to bed and I went to sleep. That's a truthful sounding statement right there. That's indicative of no deception. What Marty actually says is, I wake up about 3 o'clock every night and I stoke the fire, and then I go back to bed and I go to sleep. So it's present tense language, which is really weird. Now this shit is gonna get you. So Marty Smart's stepson, Justin, was the one sleeping over at the Sharps' house the night of the murders. He actually made it out fine. He was one of the 3 boys that were in the next room and heard nothing. Anyways, so the police were talking to him about the possibility that Justin might have seen the murders, might have witnessed the murders. I'm going to quote him on this. Get this shit. Marty Smartt replies, he is quiet enough to where he could have noticed something without me detecting him. He just fucking confessed. He basically said, I'm the one who fucking did it. Why would he say that unless he was there? The next statement is even weirder. A hammer was used during the commission of the murders. He says, I would like to see the hammer. I've been in Sue's house. The only hammer I know to come out of that house is a wooden handled one. My hammer is missing. Yeah, you're not trying to explain away why your hammer is the murder weapon. I promise, Marty. You fucking piece of shit.
Bullshit detected. Take precautions.
Unfortunately, folks, Marty Smartt is dead. Him and Bo are both deceased now. However, I am sure there's plenty of evidence for me to look into, for John and I to look into. So we're going to keep digging on this shit. Now, folks, I will be doing a couple of videos on Stephen Avery case tonight, on the Stephen Avery case tonight. Sorry. And, yeah, I got a lot of shit to do, but I'm going to go ahead and leave the link to this analysis of the statement that I researched tonight. I'm going to go ahead and leave the link to that down below in the description. I'm also going to leave a link to the GoFundMe page for Clue TV, and I will leave a link for cluetv.net, the now live website for Clue TV. Thank you all very much for watching. We'll see you soon.